Hi guys, I'm Adam Wilborn from WhatCulture and welcome to my echoey kitchen.
And I'm Brum from the TV show Brum, and today everybody is upset. We've got more really pointed comments from AJ Styles towards Paul Heyman, who he says he can't stand the look of. What's going on? We've also got reports of a top WWE executive getting a bit upset about something that went down at Extreme Rules, and on top of that, Sammy Guevara is back in AEW.
Andy Murray is correct. Shoot season is in full effect. Eric Young has had a pop at WWE. Keith Lee has vacated the NXT North American Championship. And AEW have announced a women's tag team tournament. This is the news.
Right, let's kick things off by talking about AJ Styles and Paul Heyman. So about 2 weeks ago now, maybe a little less, there was some stuff from AJ coming out saying that accusing Paul Heyman of engineering Gallows and Anderson's departure from WWE and, calling him a liar and some other stuff, some other bits and pieces. But AJ has now been on his new Twitch channel. I think the thing he used before was Mixer or something, and I believe it closed down. That's neither here nor there. Why did I even mention that? Anyway, AJ has spoken out even more on Paul Heyman here, and there's a lot of stuff to get through, so let's just cut through it. Basically, he called the guy a liar again. He reiterated that Heyman probably played a role in Gallows and Anderson leaving WWE. In fact, he said that directly. Paul advocated for Gallows and Anderson to get released. He then lied to AJ's face, allegedly, and said that he had nothing to do with their firings. He stated that this was because Gallows and Anderson didn't like dealing with Heyman, who had no interest in making them bigger stars, and he felt the duo were paid too much as well. So this led to him trying to organise their departure. AJ called this the real story. I've then got a quote from him on Heyman's alleged lying habits. I talked to a lot of guys about the situation, and you wouldn't believe how many people that I work with despise the guy because of his lies. And he'd find ways to try and throw them under the bus when he screwed up, and he would try to throw them under the bus so they would get in trouble. I heard this from several different people. He adds that it was hard to find anyone on Raw who actually liked dealing with Paul Heyman, and he believes that Vince McMahon removed him from his executive director promotion because, in his words, Vince is a very smart man who can see through a lot of crap, and he finally saw what everybody else saw. He then stated that Heyman, again, was the reason behind his recent move from Raw to SmackDown, and that he couldn't stand to look at Paul Heyman by the end. So, wow, man, there's a whole lot of stuff going on there. Obviously, the idea that AJ moved from Raw and SmackDown because he felt something was amiss with Heyman isn't new, but interesting to hear him kind of extrapolate on all this nonetheless. It's kind of also odd to hear a guy who's employed by WWE just kind of shooting all over, shall we say, another guy who is currently employed by WWE as well. So I don't get the impression that these guys are working or anything with this. I get the impression that AJ is speaking from the heart, or speaking what he believes is the truth and so forth. So it's just a mess, basically, isn't it?
Yeah, mixed emotions around all this. I mean, talking about landing on your feet. I'll go anywhere other than Monday Night Raw. What's that? SmackDown with the likes of Daniel Bryan, Matt Riddle, and a whole host of other talented stars? Yeah, I suppose that'll do. Look, this is not the first time. I've heard numerous allegations in the past. My mind turns to Jim Cornette, who's got a whole host of stories about Paul Heyman being, let's say, flexible with the truth. But then again, you've probably heard Brian Alvarez talk about the fact that as much as people want to pin it on other people like Paul Heyman, at the end of the day, people getting hired and fired comes down to Vince McMahon, and Paul Heyman was probably just the mouthpiece here. Although the accusations, to flip the other way again, the accusations that Paul Heyman wasn't happy with how much Gallows and Anderson were getting paid, well, that's not Gallows and Anderson's fault. Like, WWE paid them these exorbitant contracts to make sure they couldn't go elsewhere, and then if WWE want to pay that amount of money and then not use them, that's kind of WWE's prerogative. And if Gallows and Anderson don't want to take that and they wanted to leave and go somewhere else, that would have been up to them as well. Mixed opinions upon all of this, but yes, I sense, in summary, AJ Styles and Paul Heyman will not be exchanging Christmas cards this year.
They most certainly will not.
But shoot season continues with a former WWE employee, namely EY Eric Young, who has, of course, recently returned to Impact Wrestling. He popped up on Busted Open Radio with Bubba Ray Dudley to talk about WWE and talk about, well, the fact he was enjoying his time in NXT and then the main roster happened. He shoots all over WWE, so much to go through here. He called the promotion a disaster in how it's organised, saying it's hard to love wrestling in that kind of environment. He said he'd always wanted to work in WWE, and as I said, he enjoyed his time in NXT, but once Sanity hit the main roster, it all went wrong. The system is broken, he said. It's hard to get a word in. Even when you're doing nothing, it feels like you're fixing people's mistakes all day. And on WWE's micromanagement of things, check out this statement. There was no creativity. They all want to do everything, or they all want everyone to do things the same and be the same and bump the same and sell the same. And there is millions of rules and those change daily. It's really hard to understand what's going on and why it's going on. The system is flawed, and I would say that to anyone there, I would say it to Vince himself. So he doesn't hold back there, Andy.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a similar narrative whenever somebody leaves WWE. Very similar stories come out. Obviously heard things from Jon Moxley, Brody Lee, a bunch of other people. FTR, I think, probably the most recent example of guys who were kind of a bit more measured and so forth. It felt almost like maybe if they did have like extreme criticisms, they were maybe, tempering them just a little bit. But, I mean, like, we know what the system is at this point, right? I mean, so many of these stories have come out that it's impossible to go, you're just bitter at every single one of them. You're just upset because you got released and you couldn't cut it at the top level and all this stuff. It's, that's increasingly becoming a troll, a bad faith argument. So I'm not surprised by any of this. Eric Young was in, Sanity didn't start all that great in NXT, but they had a nice run by the end. They had that really cool feud with the Undisputed Era, and the main roster run just didn't work out for them. They were introduced really ineffectively and then stripped away from television very, very quickly. Just a sucky situation for Eric Young, who is a very solid all-around performer and, is probably in a much better place now that he's back in Impact.
Yeah, unquestionably.
Yeah, so good for him on that regard. Good for him for scoring that return. Let's talk about more upset in WWE. Kevin Dunn. Let's talk about Kevin Dunn. We haven't done that in a while. We haven't done that in... Shut up, Andrew. So, Extreme Rules. Sasha Banks, Asuka. Really great match until the finish, which kind of upset a lot of people, and a lot of people felt it derailed the match. But Kevin Dunn was upset about that match. Apparently, he is, of course, WWE's Executive Vice President of Television Production. He was upset about that for different reasons. Apparently, we got a report here from Fightful Select saying that Dunn was, and I quote, set off by a bunch of technical blunders during the clash, including several moments where the cameras were more focused on Bayley at ringside when they should have been focused on other things. No other specific things are mentioned, and it is stated that these weren't like major game-breaking issues, but they were enough apparently for Kevin Dunn to blow his top and blast the people around him for not sufficiently protecting the talent. So, what's going on in this company at the moment, man? Everybody's pissed off. Is anyone happy right now? I hope so, but it doesn't goddamn sound like it.
No, I mean, it's understandable why you'd be upset with a variety of issues surrounding that match. Like you say, I think no one will remember in a few weeks' time what a great match it was, and those hideous-looking suplexes from Asuka, for example, and the wonderful story that Sasha built in that match, selling her knee, etc., and saying, she needs to win the championship, etc., etc. All they remember is all that bollocks, which is going to have to be resolved and try and pop a TV rating next week. But yeah, I can understand why Kevin Dunn would be upset technically as well, because it's his bread and butter, and if things go wrong there, it also kind of falls on him.
Yeah, precisely. He obviously doesn't want his head on the chopping block and so forth. We hear all kinds of stuff, all kinds of things about WWE's empty arena era. I love the stories we hear about these people booming orders to the wrestlers over this loudspeaker in the building and stuff. And then we had Stephanie on Raw this week, kind of looming over everyone like some kind of godhead. It's a crazy, crazy thing, and Kevin Dunn blowing his top is certainly part of that.
Indeed. Right, let's talk a little bit about last night's episode of NXT, because it opened with Keith Lee vacating the NXT North American Championship. He basically said he didn't want to remove opportunities for other roster members, and he was only going to drop that title, A, to focus obviously on defending his NXT championship, and B, he would only do so if lots of people on the roster got the opportunity, and they are doing. It is all building to a NXT North American Championship ladder match at TakeOver 30, or as I like to call it, TakeOver Kiss Kiss Kiss. That takes place the night before SummerSlam on August 22nd. Bronson Reed already qualified last night, defeating Johnny Gargano and Roderick Strong in a triple threat. Next week, we get Finn Balor, Dexter Lumis, and Timothy Thatcher. What a match that is going to be, and I'm already very excited about TakeOver 30, which can take place in just under a month's time.
Yeah, I think it's the right thing to do as well, vacating the title and so forth. It's great being a double champion, it's great having that on your resume and stuff, and it looks very prestigious, but at the end of the day, you don't want to strangle one of the divisions potentially. You can kind of counteract that by having Keith Lee wrestle like every single week, but then you undervalue Keith Lee. You want to maintain prestige, and you want to make sure things are, you're not overexposed to guys. So, totally in favour of this. NXT ladder matches are always fun little spot fests. They'll do so much creative stuff with that. Personnel look interesting. Bronson Reed's a cool participant. I think it's a guy who hasn't really had many major opportunities to shine yet. So looking forward to seeing what that big beefy boy can do. It's the right move, I reckon.
Absolutely.
And also it continues Keith Lee's theme of just being a really nice bloke.
Yes, exactly.
Let's talk AEW. Let's pivot over to Canland. Let's call it that. Sure, Sugarland. Sugarland. There we go. For a little bit. So Sammy Guevara returned on last night's AEW Dynamite. He'd been away for 30 days in terms of, the suspension beginning and the show airing, although it might have been a little bit shorter than that, depending on when this show was taped. However, it was an angle in the night's main event. It was Chris Jericho and Jake Hager. They were fighting Jurassic Express, Luchasaurus, and Jungle Boy. Interference spot by what we thought was Serpentico, who's an indie wrestler who's been used as a jobber and an enhancement guy on Dark lately. He interfered, hit Luchasaurus with a bat. This allowed Jericho to hit the codebreaker and the win. Afterwards, the beatdown continued. Everyone's selling it like Serpentico's joined the inner circle, which would have been pretty weird. Serpentico then hit a shooting star press, unmasked. It was Sammy Guevara. Angle to close the show had Orange Cassidy and the Best Friends coming down to kind of run them off, continuing that feud. 5-on-5 match next week. The big story is obviously Sammy's comeback. He was suspended when a clip of him making a horrendous joke. There's no other word. There's lots of words for it. I'm using horrendous because it was awful. A joke about WWE Sasha Banks on a podcast 4 years ago. It went viral, kind of at the heart of the speaking out movement and so forth. AEW handed out I think most of us can agree, pretty appropriate punishment at the time. Suspended without pay. Pay was going to a women's group in Jacksonville. Sensitivity training. Sammy apologised several times. He had the conversation with Sasha Banks, who issued a really classy statement over the whole thing. So this is a really tough situation to analyse, right? Because my personal belief in situations like this, and pardon me for editorialising, is that there is no right or wrong number of days that is an appropriate punishment. The appropriate punishment for me for a situation like this is for however long it takes for the lesson to be learned and the behaviours to be corrected. Is that 30 days? Well, Sammy and the people close to him will find that out over the coming weeks and months. Is that not too short? Is it too long? I don't have the answers. Either way, they've made the decision to bring him back. They obviously feel that enough time has passed. A lot of people have a lot of strong opinions on this. I think the best thing to do in a situation like this is to temper those until we know for sure whether or not the lesson has been learned. Because I can't sit here and say it hasn't been learned, but I can't also say it has. So there we are.
Yeah, I don't think there's a lot more to say. I think you've really hit the nail on the head there, Andy. It's obviously a divisive issue bringing him back. You look in just the Twitter responses to even the official tweet from AEW about him returning, and some people are saying, it's great to see him back, the Inner Circle have missed him, and look, he apologised, he served his time, let's just move on from this. And other people who are wanting him to be cancelled, wanting him to be fired, wanting him, in the bare minimum, to be off TV for longer. I don't think you're ever going to please everyone with this. And I think what Andy said, I would just fully endorse there, and there's not a great deal more to say on that issue. But let's talk a little bit more what happened in Canada, aka AEW last night. They announced a women's tag team tournament, the Deadly Draw. It's going to take place over the summer, although we are in the summer right now. Not that it looks like it right now in Gateshead, but anyway. 16 wrestlers, all competing, 8 different teams, of course. Already confirmed the Nightmare Sisters, Ali and Brandy Rhodes. We saw the likes of Penelope Ford, Big Swole, Nyla Rose, Anna Jay in this whole video package. You go and check out the tweet on AEW's Twitter page at AE Wrestling on Twitter, I do believe, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. It's there's a lot of valid comments to be made about the women's division, how it's been presented, and how it's definitely thinner during this whole thing because the Japanese wrestlers, the ones who don't live in the US, like Hikaru Shida does, they can't travel. Britt Baker's been injured, Chris Statlander's been injured. It's been a difficult time for the AEW women's division. However, this is an opportunity to get more of them on television on a more regular basis, more exposure, more chance for these people to show what they can do, and more opportunities. I don't see how this can be anything but a positive. Looking forward to it. Looking forward to hopefully a few stars emerging from it as well.
Exactly, yeah. Cedric alluded to this when we just suddenly started seeing Brandy and Ali being chucked together as part of a tag team, whether or not they were just going to suddenly create a tag team division. I like this. Feels a little bit more organic, and they are openly accepting the fact that some teams will just be 2 people chucked together, but seems to have worked pretty well for Kenny Omega and Hangman Page. So there we go. And if you want to know the rest of the Dudley Boys' thoughts of it, make sure you check out WhatCulture Wrestling, wherever you get your podcasts from, for our reviews of AEW Dynamite and NXT a little bit later on today. But for now, let's move on to your Twitter questions at WhatCulture WWE, of course, if you want to get in touch with us. First question today comes from Daniel Murphy, who says, do you think Eddie Kingston is here to stay in AEW? And if so, how do you see his push? Andy, you called this.
Yeah, man. So delighted to see Eddie Kingston on Dynamite last night. He's just an indie veteran who's grafted so much for spots in the game and never really been given a full look by he was in Impact obviously for a while and he's had spots in Ring of Honor, but never given like a full-time gig in a company like AEW or WWE. I would love to see him come in. I think he has so much to offer. He's like minimum like a top 3 promo, I think, in the entire sport. He's brilliant in that regard. Great match with Cody last night as well. I would love to see them pick him up. I think they will, just a hunch. They picked up Ricky Starks when Tony Khan watched the match with Cody and was like, oh God, this guy rules. And I don't know how, if you're Tony Khan and maybe you haven't seen a whole lot of Eddie Kingston, I don't know how you can look at that promo and the whole presentation tonight and go, yep, this guy can talk people into buildings. So get that dude in. He offers something completely unique. He's so real and gritty and believable. He offers something completely unique to everyone else on the roster. If he comes in, I would love to see him be like just a really strong fixture on the upper mid card. I love Eddie Kingston, man, and he was great last night.
Yeah, a lot of people already fantasy booking him against Moxley, against Brody Lee. It's exciting. It really opened my eyes. I'd heard a lot of talk about Eddie Kingston, and he's always been one of those guys who I've said, I should check out more of him. And mother of God, what a way to open last night's episode of AEW Dynamite. That promo. If you don't like Eddie Kingston, I swear on my mother's beautiful eyes that I will gouge your eyes out, to quote the great man himself.
By all accounts as well, one of the nice guys in professional wrestling, and Lord knows we need to put our faith in a few of those at the moment. So let's get behind Eddie Kingston, man. Even if he doesn't end up in AEW full time, he's a killer on the indies. Follow his stuff. He's great.
One of the nice guys who Andy and I are completely terrified.
Yeah, that is some fearsome stuff whenever he opens his mouth, man.
Second question today comes from Sam Long, who says the general opinion is that there are far too many belts in WWE. Do you think it's time to combine the men's tag team belts, leaving one belt for the men and one for the women, that both go cross-brand? I mean, what do you reckon, Andy? Should they put the belt in the bin?
I think they should put the belt in the bin. I think it's a good idea. I was kind of in favour of this when the brand split kicked in 4 years ago. Was it 2016? I think it was 2016. When it returned, I was like, look at how thin certain divisions are. The women's division on the main roster was quite thin at the time as well, although that's been kind of fixed in recent years. The women's divisions are great now. But yes, the tag division... WWE don't prioritise tag division. They don't book it particularly well. You have fits and starts. You have situations like the Usos versus the New Day a few years ago, which is just brilliant stuff. But for the most part, it's neglected, and the divisions are too thin, particularly on SmackDown, I reckon. So yeah, I'm all for this. I like the Women's Tag Team Championships as a travelling belt, and I don't see why the men's tag team titles can't be the same either.
Yeah, completely agree. Unify them at Survivor Series, jobs are good. Final question today comes from Jake on Twitter.
Legend.
Who says, I wish there was a world in which Eddie Kingston and Taz could have been a tag team for the promos alone. Sweet Jesus, that would have been good. What current wrestler and what wrestler who's retired from in-ring action would be your dream tag team?
Oh my goodness. Well, after watching him swinging around a barbed wire baseball bat last night, I think I'm going to go for John Moxley and Cactus Jack. Why the hell not? You imagine how much damage those guys would do together, even to themselves. It would be ridiculous. I could also put like John Moxley with like Brian Pillman, loose cannon Brian Pillman. I think that'd be sick as well. I'm kind of in a ghoulish, violent, thuggish wrestling mood at the moment, so give me all that stuff.
I'm going to have to go with the first tag team that I thought of. They're spectacular picks, Andy. Kurt Angle and Chad Gable. It's right there.
Yeah.
It's right there. I know it's simple, but let us know your thoughts in the comment section below who you'd like to see team together if it was possible. Let's move on to today's and finding. Shout out to Eric Vasquez who tagged me in this morning, and I just love it. Someone, Ant Won't Stop on Twitter, has made a whole month of an NWO calendar. So based on your date of birth, you can find out which an NWO member you are. Andy Murray, you were born, if I'm not mistaken, on the 17th. Is that correct?
That's correct.
You would be Conan in NWO. But it could be worse because you could be me, Adam Wilborn, 8th of August. Still time to get your presents to me. I'm Vincent. So Ben Roy, our editor. Ben Roy, our editor. What date were you born? 4th. Is that 4th? Of course. Trillionaire Ted. Of course you are.
But, son of his favourite wrestler of all time. I love
indeed.
to see it. Dad. Ted DiBiase Jr. is not Ted DiBiase Sr.'s dad.
But they're all up there. I've liked the tweet at WhatCulture WWE, but you can also check it out at Ant Won't Stop. Share that around. Find out which NWO member you would be. Just don't be born on the 26th. Horace Hogan. No, thank you.
Shut up, you dudes.
Right, let us know your thoughts on that and all of today's news stories in the comment section below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And subscribe to What Culture Wrestling on either iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts from. For daily wrestling podcasts, as I said, the AEW and WWE, NXT and Dynamite reviews coming a little bit later on today. Plus, you can let us know your thoughts, your Twitter questions, everything like that at WhatCulture WWE. Well, actually, follow both of us. You can follow Andy Murray at...
You can follow me at Andy H. Murray, and the H stands for hand sanitizer. See it there? Just tickling its undercarriage, because I love the hand sanitizer. Yes.
Oh, God, I've just seen 24th, if you were born. Dennis Rodman. Okay.
Whoa! Who's got Michael Wall Street? That's what I want to know.
Oh, it's a mixed bag, I'll tell you right now. I mean, there's Scott Hall and Kevin Nash, but there's also, David Flair and Nick Patrick. So Michael Wall Street's on there. Jesus, go and check it out. Follow me on Twitter at Adam Wilborn. Follow us all at WhatCultureWE, as I said. But for now, my thanks to Andy Murray. Thank you for watching. Welcome to my kitchen, and we see you soon.